Mrs. Swanson here, and this lesson is going to have two parts. Part 1, we're going to be changing mixed numbers into improper fractions. Let's look at some vocabulary here. A mixed number is a number that has a whole number out front and then a fraction part, like 3/2. 3 1/2, I should say. An improper fraction is where you have a numerator where your number is larger than the denominator. I'm going to teach you 3 simple steps for moving a number from a mixed number to an improper fraction. Here I have the mixed number 4 2/3. So 4 is my whole number, 2/3 is my fraction. My first step is to take the denominator times the whole number. So 4 times 3 equals 12. Next step is to add my answer to the numerator. So 12 plus 2 equals 14. Step 3 is to make sure that the denominator stays the same, so this 3 isn't going to change. I take the answer that I just got and put it over that same denominator. Now we have an improper fraction. Sometimes when I'm thinking through these problems, I like to add little symbols here. So I have 3 times 4, my denominator, times my whole number, plus 2, my numerator. So if I'm doing a problem like, let's say I have 3 1/2, I would say, okay, 3 times 2 plus 1, or 2 times 3, 6, plus 1 is 7, 7/2. Either writing these little symbols down or following the steps, whichever works for you. Works for me. Second part of this lesson is moving from an improper fraction back to a mixed number. This can be a little bit more difficult and involve some division. So let's look at an improper fraction. Say 16/9. Instead of thinking of steps here, I like to think of questions I have to ask myself. The first question is, how many times does my numerator divide into my denominator? So when I'm looking at 16 and 9, how many times does 16 go into 9? The answer, 1. A multiplication chart would be a helpful tool to use here. You could go across the 9s line until you find a number that is close to 16 but not over it, and then see what number was divided into. What I mean by that is, down here we have a little piece of a multiplication chart. So I'm going to cross my 9s line, and I see I have 9, 18, which is already over my numerator number, which is 16. So I can't go that far. I know we're going to be right here. I look at the top, and that was a number 1. That's telling us that 16 goes into 9 one time. That's why I have my whole number as a 1. Now the second question I ask myself is, how many is left over? So if I take 9 away from this 16, what am I left? The answer, 7. So I have 7/9 left over. Another way to solve this would be doing long division. So just to remind you, we had a starting problem of 16/9. So I would write that as 16 divided by 9. As we said, we know that 9 goes into 16 one time. We write our 9 down here, do our subtracting, and we know we have 7 left. So 1 7/9. I would try a couple of practice problems and see what works best for you. Pause the video to try these problems on your own, moving from a mixed number to an improper fraction. This was part 1 of the video. Go ahead and press play when you're ready to check your work. Remembering our steps, the first thing we do is take our denominator times the whole number, add our numerator. So 3 times 7, 21, plus 2, 23/3. Looking at this problem here, 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 more is 21. Remember, our denominator stays the same. Try these problems moving from an improper fraction to a mixed number. Go ahead and pause the video and press play when you're ready to check your work. Looking at 32/6, I'm going to ask myself, how many times does 32 go into 6? I know that 6 times 5 is 30. Then how many is left over? 2 6. I'm even going to simplify this down because I know I can take a 2 out of both of these to get 1/3. So my final answer is 5 1/3. I'll try the next one using long division. So I have 17 divided by 5, which can go in 3 times, which gives me 15. And when I subtract, I'm left with 2, which becomes my numerator. And my 5 out here stays my denominator. And I get 3 2/5. Let's go over our key points. Moving from a mixed number to improper, our first step is take our denominator times our whole number, add that to our numerator, and our denominator stays the same. With improper fractions, moving to mixed numbers, the first question we want to ask is how many times does our numerator divide into our denominator? Then we ask ourselves how much is left over, and that number becomes our new numerator. That's all for this lesson. Thanks for studying with Swanson.